Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with men and women as ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is one of India's best classical vocalists who epitomizes the highest and the best dimensions of that tradition. He's a teacher, a composer, performer and an academician who's done a Master of Philosophy in Music. He heads the Gandharva Mahavidyalaya and has been performing on stages and performances at auditorium for students across the world. I'm delighted to welcome Madhup Mudgal.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. When you sing, the great quality of your singing is the way you sort of almost lovingly caress and feel the words that you're singing. How conscious a process is that? You have been through several great masters, Kumar Gandharva, you have been through Pandit Jasraj, your father, and each person in some senses has a different style of singing. And it is this quality of very intense emotion, feeling, caressing the words that in some senses distinguishes you. How has this quality developed? Is it something that you consciously do as technique? Is it just the sum total of a whole process of sadhana and of learning?
All these together, so some technique also, some sadhana, and it differs from different styles of singing. Like in a khyal, the phonetic value of the words is more important rather than the meaning. Meaning, in the beginning it takes place and then it goes back. The phonetic value remains. In a bhajan or other forms of singing, then the words are very important. You have to stress the words in a different way. Especially in a nirgun bhajan, the stress is different. In sagun bhajans, the stress is different. The way you sing.
But what is the internal process? What we hear finally is a sum total of a very complex thing that's going on from inside of you, and in some ways obviously it's not conscious once you have done it so often and to such perfection. It's a question of flow and surrender. But if we would try to go backwards in terms of the technique and the feeling and the emotion that you bring to it, what comes first?
See, that the whole process is very important. The end performance, the period before that, like for the festival of Gurbani, I was supposed to sing Shabad. So we were practicing for the last 6 months. That process is so enjoyable, and every day it was a learning process. Sometimes it didn't come out well, sometimes it came out so well that I was really, it was so nice. It didn't matter if the performance was not as good as that. That process, you go through that process, that is very important.
So when you say that it didn't come out well, do you have a sense of it? Is that coming out well a function of the intensity of the emotion you have communicated or committed to what you're singing or saying, or to what has happened to the voice or the virtuosity of it?
More with the voice and all, because it is music after all. It can't be the same every day. It depends on many factors, your voice, the instruments, and that clicking together, when it comes together. So it can happen in a performance, it can happen before, it can happen after that. That is the thing.
So isn't it this quality of emotion but that raises just virtuosity and a good voice and good voice control to something much more and sublime, where communication takes place at a more subtle, at a more nuanced level than just a clever use of voice?
That is true, but that is only, it doesn't happen always. But these are moments of creativity, what you can say. They happen seldom, but they are very, very nice moments. These moments.
This aspect of the creative wellspring that you just talked about, the creative moments. Isn't it often a risk for classical musicians or any musician really? Who's performed the same thing, very often, that you just begin to do it mindlessly because you have a formula. as to what works, and that you don't bring of yourself into each separate performance.
No, for me, I have to bring myself. Sorry, for me, I have to bring myself into every performance, and the process is so beautiful that you know the rag, you know how to sing the rag, and yet it is different every day, and that is the beauty, and that is what it should be in a musician. It shouldn't be the same. It should vary. It can be, the quality can be better or bad, but it shouldn't remain the same. Otherwise, he's not a fine artist. If you sing something today, and you after 4 years you sing, if the thought process is same, then I'm sorry, then he's not a fine artist.
Then, in that sense, how sensitive are you to the audience, to the response of the audience to what you're singing? In the sense that I suppose that, you know, when you're doing a play or you're doing something, so there is a relationship with the audience, there is a presence of the audience, and you know that you're singing perfectly, and yet the audience isn't responding. So does that tempt you to change it in some ways so that you can better relate to the audience? Is the audience present for you, or are you able to just turn off and say, I am singing, this is a sublime experience, and I'm just doing what I'm doing?
I try to do this. Sometimes it happens that they're really not responsive at all. Then you get put off, but you have a job to do. You finish that. Otherwise, I like to address my singing first to myself. I want to enjoy it first, because for that only I took up music. See, Anand, जो आनंद आता है स्वरों में, उसी के लिए तो सीखना शुरू किया था. तो वो, I don't want to forget that. And of course it helps if the audience is receptive and they applaud you in between. And sometimes the silent audience is also very nice, who give you the total vibes. They listen to you quietly without. That is also very beautiful. Like when you're singing in radio, you're addressing it to yourself. I sometimes find this in foreign audience. They listen to you so quietly. And in everything you are just singing to yourself. That is really very nice. And of course, the other part is that you have audiences in Maharashtra and all, where they really understand each and everything that you are singing. That is a different feeling, different experience.
You just spoke about Anand, you know, the blissful experience and state. I'm also sort of curious about the mental state when you're singing, in terms of there are so many elements that involve sort of like almost like a multitasking of attention. You have to be thinking of so many elements at the same time.
Correct.
And yet experiencing bliss. Is that possible? Are you so lost in the detail that is the voice sounding right? Is the audience listening? Is the tanpura balanced? Is what happened? How does all of this come together to create this moment of bliss?
Like I told you, you have to look after all these factors that you just mentioned, and through that only it will come. And it comes, sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't come. It can also come, that movement of creativity, while composing. During those moments, you just forget about everything in the world. You don't feel hunger, you don't feel anything at all, just those. But those moments are very few, but they're really, really full of बहुत ही आनंद होता है.
You're watching a conversation with the classical vocalist Madhup Mudgal. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away.
Straight. मेरी कमर. है.
और कितने लोग हैं?
पूरी 12 थे सर.
हाँ, मेरा सर.
सर. झंडू बाम. सर्दी सरदर्द कमर दर्द को पल में दूर करे. झंडू बाम. झंडू बाम.
एक बाम 3 काम.
बांगड़ वर्ल्ड क्लास सीमेंट. बांगड़ सीमेंट सस्ता नहीं, सबसे अच्छा.
आपकी पसंद का अगला गीत फिल्म कच्ची कली से.
और कहाँ हो आजकल?
नई जो आई है,
कैसी है?
फिट है, क्या लगती है, क्या चाल है, और नखरा बिल्कुल नहीं.
कहाँ है?
भतीजे के पास. उसका दिल जो आ गया है.
चाचू चले?
आ गई.
अब सिर्फ 30,990 रुपए में नई क्रैश।
क्यों है ना सबसे फिट?
यामाहा।
कितनी टेंशन रहती थी, पता नहीं कब रेट पड़ जाए।
क्या आप ईमानदारी से सर्विस टैक्स जमा कराते हैं?
हाँ हाँ, पूछो पूछो, क्यों नहीं। लेकिन उससे पहले जरा इसे भी तो देखो।
टैक्सों से प्राप्त धन को देश के विकास और सुरक्षा के लिए खर्च किया जाता है। दाम ज्यादा, दाम सही। मिली पत्ती चाय अब सिर्फ 5 रुपए में।
बांगड़ वर्ल्ड क्लास सीमेंट। बांगड़ सीमेंट, सस्ता नहीं सबसे अच्छा।
एक मैं और एक देख देख।
अब सिर्फ 1 रुपए में मिले सुलझे बाल। नया रिजॉइस सैशे।
ये तो होना ही था।
सिर्फ 1 रुपए में।
क्या मस्त खुले है, जबरदस्त खुले तुम वक्त खुले तो खुल गए रे।
हिमानी का आयुर्वेदिक कब्ज नाशक चूर्ण। गुड मॉर्निंग, कब्ज दूर करे बिना पेट में मरोड़ के। हिमानी का गुड मॉर्निंग।
Welcome back to a continuing conversation with the vocalist Madhup Mudgal. You know, you've recently been awarded the Padma Shri. How important or how useful, let me put it that way, are honors, recognition, awards, good reviews, write-ups in the press? I mean, I'm sure that at some level, you know, the pure musician that you are, you need your own gratification and you need to feel you're doing a job well. But functionally, you know, you run an institution, you have lots of other aspects in samsara that we all have to live and deal with. It must come useful in those cases.
Yeah, for the institution, yes. For maybe the public eye, and for me also, आनंद तो खुशी तो हुई कि you've been awarded, and for me, but it brings more responsibility, more seriousness. That now I have to be better than what I was. It's without saying that I'm doing what I'm doing. It's not that I've stopped something or after this award that it'll stop or something. No, it'll go on the same way. तानपुरे के साथ जो समय बिताना है, जो स्वर लगाना है, वो तो वैसे ही चलेगा. उसमें कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता आप कितने भी अवार्ड मिले, आप वो सच्चाई वैसे ही चलना चाहिए. पर जैसे आपने बोला पब्लिक के हिसाब से, it matters that way. Yes.
So you know, you're running this institution, you're teaching a very large number of students and young people. How important is that process of transmission and teaching for you? Because you know, you worked very intimately with several great teachers I mentioned earlier, and I would imagine that as with any association with a great master, that the learning is not merely in what they teach you and say to you, which of course is important, but in a kind of transmission, what is subliminally transmitted to you in a very ineffable kind of way, just comes. The modern approach to teaching music, is there room for that?
I find it very difficult because the way I've learned, it was never for that you have to go and perform this as such. It was for sake of learning, sake of music, sake of Anand, that you are enjoying doing this. And that is the feeling which I want to pass on to my students, and I try to do that. It's in a way similar to a performance, teaching also. You can transfer that Anand to the students, how you get that, how you get that feeling of while in a performance. So I try to do that, and let's hope.
So, but in what ways do you think that, you know, your students are different to the kind of student that you might have been? Of course, you know, you came from a family and a father that, you know, who was a great musician himself, and so that was part of your genes, perhaps. In what ways are these students different?
The main difference today is that everything is they want it to be result oriented. Sometimes it's not like this in music. In fine arts, many phases are there. We just have to do things for doing it. You have to do it. You'll get the result later on. But immediate results, they're not immediate results in fine arts. That is what the students tend to look for nowadays. And in our time there was so much time. I can't explain how. There was more time than there is today. That is a process I can't explain that.
So would you say that this aspect, that we have celebrated in our traditions of sadhana, which involves the guru, it involves transmission, it involves effort, and I think something much more complex than just training and effort. It's an interweaving of many complex ideas and processes, is progressively being lost.
Yeah, you can say that. It is being lost. And another thing is that glamour has come into this field. So whole thing changes. Whole thing has become result oriented. Like you learn this composition, you'll go and present, then you get something out of this. It's not that. It should be for the sake of just that enjoyment. First, it should be like that. Everything else will follow.
Can you try and explain that? What we've used the word anand and bliss, or I don't know how exactly you would translate something like that. But what does music do for you? What does it give you? Music is your life at so many levels and dimensions, and in many ways, in more pure terms than it is for most people. And you are recognized and celebrated and applauded as a classical musician who's still upholding the purest values of its tradition. Now, what does music give to you? I know this is a very difficult question to sort of to try and verbalize, but please try.
I'll try, but this is again I'll come back to that. जो आनंद जिसमें जो अच्छा लगता है, एक तृप्ति होती है, वो और उसमें बहुत मुश्किल से होता है। ये म्यूजिक में जो संगीत, जो स्वर खुद गाने में जो तानपुरे के साथ एक जो आनंद आता है, आपके पूरे शरीर से वो सब वो आनंद होता है, वो और कहीं मैंने देखा नहीं। और वैसे
आनंद तब भी आएगा अगर हम गाने की कोशिश करें। हम तो गा नहीं पाते। अगर हम कोशिश करें तो और उसको ठीक से नहीं गाएं और बिल्कुल स्वर ना हो, उसमें ना मेलोडी हो, ना कुछ भी ना हो, तो ये अच्छे तरीके से गाने से आता है कि सिर्फ एफर्ट से आता है?
No, it can be main is feeling, how you perceive it. Like for a भक्त जो रास्ते में गाते हैं या कहीं गाते हैं, वो सुर में नहीं होंगे, पर वो भक्ति में शायद हमसे ज़्यादा हों, तो उसका आनंद आ रहा है. That is the point. वो किस तरह से आप उसको कितने लीन होके गाते हैं, that is more important.
Do you think that in order to be a good and a great musician, and here we're talking about being pure, and the motive and not thinking too much about audiences, not thinking about showmanship, that you also have to be a good human being, circumscribed by good ethical and moral values, and then you're pure, and so your music is pure?
That's a question I always it's very difficult, because I've seen so many great artists who are real villains in life. But for me, I think maybe later on it does affect. For me, it should be a very nice person and good human being, and it will have effect on your music later on. Not in the beginning, maybe. Beginning, the brilliance of the artist will take over, but later on it will show. Somewhere it will show.
You mean it will show in the quality and the performance of what he does at a subtle level? You will pick up that this is being done because someone is writing him a large check, and there's lots of sort of fans of the opposite sex who are celebrating the artist.
No, not that way. I meant only in his work. I meant only in his work. You'll make out later on, maybe not in his early period. Later on, I think definitely it will have an effect.
When you've done some fusion work, and I think that there was some element of surprise that purists like Madhup Mudgal would go in and then explore fusion music, which is ordinarily seen as sort of something that you do for the galleries, and you move out of the pure domain of it. But you were telling me, and that was very interesting, that you actually did this with Brazilian music, and you did it with street children. So was it the fact that you were working with street children and that was the constituency that made it somehow more meaningful and worthwhile than just doing fusion music per se?
It could be that way, but I had done before also, twice. But for fusion music, I'd say that sometimes just for experiment's sake, you can do it. You can't do it, but it's not something that you work on seriously throughout your day or something. It's something occasionally.
You're watching a conversation with the music scholar, performer and composer Madhup Mudgal. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away.
गेंदा, तू कहाँ से आया? नई मोटरसाइकिल? अरे तूने स्प्लेंडर छोड़ दी? सेल्फ स्टार्ट है, पर इसके लिए स्प्लेंडर छोड़ दी? पावरफुल तो है, पर स्प्लेंडर
125 सीसी क्वांटम कोर इंजन और माइलेज भी ज्यादा।
नाला, स्प्लेंडर का भरोसा कहाँ मिलेगा?
मिलेगा डैड, क्योंकि ये है नई सुपर स्प्लेंडर। और डैड, दिखने में भी सुपर है।
अच्छा, डैड से पंगा, रुक।
डैड?
डैड नहीं, सुपर डैड। चलो, अब सुपर स्प्लेंडर पे घुमाओ।
न्यू 125cc सुपर स्प्लेंडर विद सेल्फ स्टार्ट। जनरेशन नई, भरोसा वही।
बांगड़ वर्ल्ड क्लास सीमेंट। बांगड़ सीमेंट, सस्ता नहीं सबसे अच्छा।
सिर्फ डिस्प्रिन घुल जाए, शरीर में समाए, असर दिखाए, तुरंत डिस्प्रिन।
दाम ज्यादा, दाम सही। मिली पत्ती चाय अब सिर्फ 10 रुपए में।
अब मुझे कोई बेवकूफ नहीं बना सकता।
पेश है HP चैंपियन डीजल इंजन ऑयल, क्वालिटी सबसे बढ़िया, दाम एकदम सही। HP चैंपियन।
चुप चुप के, ओ चुप चुप के, चुप चुप के।
मर्द होकर लड़कियों वाली क्रीम।
चुप के।
इमामी फेयर एंड हैंडसम क्रीम का डबल स्ट्रेंथ पेप्टाइड और दुर्लभ जड़ी बूटियां मर्दों को बनाए हैंडसम।
Hi handsome, hi handsome.
Imami Fair and Handsome Cream for Men.
Hi handsome.
Welcome back to continuing conversation with the great purist of Indian classical vocal music, Madhup Mudgal. You did an academic degree, you did an MPhil in music from Delhi University. It's sort of unusual for a practicing, performing musician to go into an academic study of music. What prompted you to do that? You were already sort of so immersed in the practicality of it, and then why go and sort of, read books and theories about it? You're just doing it. You're creating music that other people are building theories from.
Frankly, I can't say what prompted me to go there, but I can tell you that if it had been more practical, it was relevant today, it would have been really interesting. The theory part of it. The theory part, it wasn't so interesting because you can't relate to music. What was, I think the mostly you can relate to is 150 years. Before that, you can't relate to it because the scale was different. It could have been very, very interesting if it had some relation to what we are doing today.
When people write about your music or critics respond to them, how often do you think they've got the point, or they've picked up what you're really at such subtle levels trying to do? I mean, have they heard it? Have they noticed what you're trying to do?
Some of the critics, yes, but sometimes absolutely not. Very different. They don't understand, but some of them, yes, they understand. And you feel very nice that they could catch what you're trying to do. They could see what you're doing.
So would you say then that you're really looking at a music critic writing in the popular press or in a general magazine to facilitate music appreciation, to sensitize people to go out and when Madhup Mudgal is singing, this is what you go out and look for?
No.
Or any other musician.
A general. And for a younger musician, they should always be encouraging. Just maybe their faults also you can point out, but what the whole, how many years have gone into his practice when he comes onto the stage? And I know some critics, they will write about a young musician like, wo theek nahi tha, ye nahi tha. For a debutant or something, it should always be some words of encouragement. And slowly you can put the whatever faults you want to point out.
You know, you're sort of, well, barely half a century old, and you know, the long and distinguished career that still awaits you, and in the changing external environment of globalization, glamour, television, short attention spans, what kind of ambition, aspiration, future do you see for yourself? So, staying in this grand institution, the student of a great master, doing what you're doing?
See, first of all, looking back on these 50 years, I feel I've really lost out on time. I could have done more. That's what I feel. There's so many things to learn and to experience and sing that way. And in the teaching process, I would say that I would like to have those values which were there, I would say 30 to 40 years before in our music.
Such as?
Like the honesty, purity of rags, dedication, patience, all these virtues were there before.
But your master, your principal master, if I may call him, Kumar Gandharva, was considered a rebel. Do you see yourself as a rebel?
No. And I would like to say this, that he wasn't a rebel in the sense that people say. He was the most orthodox artist, I would say. The values he had given us, the seriousness of his concerts, the way he would plan out everything. All these values, you can't call a rebel. He would go on time, he'll be there 1 hour. He would say, "Beta, time pe jana, hamesha, तानपुरों का ध्यान रखना, कितना भी नाम हो जाए तो ये नहीं करना, हमेशा ध्यान रखना कि सुर लग रहा है कि नहीं, कितना भी नाम हो जाए." Such values, ये तो, these are very little, many different things he has told us. You can't call such a person a rebel. I'm sorry.
So in this, sort of the aspiration for the sort of, the remaining half century of your life, you've been speaking about, Anand, these moments of creative bliss. So is that what drives you, and you feel you'd like to maximize the number of moments of that creative bliss, and as they expand, the more complete your life is, and you have fulfilled your life's purpose as a musician?
Yes, that way. What I have been doing, I'll be doing that only. I can't see myself doing something very different. This only, but with more intensity and more seriousness, and I would like to gain more knowledge of the rags only.
So is that process primarily an internal one? This, the creation, the seeking, the cultivation of Ananda as maybe in a state of perpetual Ananda?
It can't be like when I was, you say, from 20 to 30 or 35 years of age. That time the abhyas or practice is different. Now it's more intensified and more in the mind and thinking process is more nowadays.
Thank you very much, Madhupji. This has been a great honor and a great learning experience.
Thank
you.